6 months ago, I committed to a full year without alcohol. To give myself a purpose for doing this, I set a series of goals. One of those was to run a sub 3 hour 30 marathon. I'm sitting here 2 days after the race with my medal to prove that I finished it. And I can confidently say two things. The first thing is that I achieved my goal and broke 3 hour 30. The second is that I don't think I would have done it if I was still drinking. In this video, I'm going to share why I believe so strongly that to be a true statement and my 3 key ingredients that I believe led to achieving this goal. Let's talk very briefly about the race weekend. Now, conditions were not set up for me to achieve this goal. The weather was horrendous. The start of the race was congested, and it was very hard to find any real rhythm that's required to have a successful marathon race. I was also entering into uncharted territory, having never done the distance before. The first half of the race, I took a cautious approach. So that combined with the congestion and bad weather meant I was 2 minutes off the pace when I approached the halfway point. But as most people will tell you, the second half of the marathon is what separates those people that have prepared well versus those people that are perhaps blagging it. And that leads me on to my first key ingredient, which is that consistency is key. Ambition has never been a problem for me. I've always set hard to reach goals. I'm called a bit of a dreamer by people I know. But it's the consistency in doing everything it takes to get to those goals which makes me usually fall short. I tend to work in short bursts rather than focusing on what needs to be done every single day. The marathon is an endurance test that will expose all of these inconsistencies in your preparation. Everyone talks about the final 10K going one of two ways. Either you've burned through all of the carbohydrates in your system and the muscles just stop working and people hit the dreaded wall, or the training and strategy all comes together and you end up being a cut above the rest. It's your opportunity to excel. My final mile was the quickest of all, even though I'd already done 25 miles. And the second half of the race, so the second half marathon, was the quickest I've ever done the half marathon distance in. So this is where my consistency of training and thirst for knowledge to learn more and investment in expert advice really pulled through. And I don't want anyone with a similar goal to think that this is easy. As I mentioned in my video where I set out the goal, I do have a history of running. I'm not coming at this with a completely fresh start. And the training was demanding. We're talking 6 cardio sessions a week of a minimum of 50 minutes, 2 to 3 strength sessions a week. I had a soft tissue therapist that I saw bi-weekly to help prevent injuries. And I invested in a 3D gait analysis to look at my running style, again, to help prevent injury. To some people, that might sound daunting and that might get in the way of even starting to work towards that goal. But here's where the quitting drinking comes into its own. I was able to maintain this consistency without really impacting other aspects of my life. And that was for 2 reasons. The first is I'd unlocked an extra 2-hour window in the morning where I could train because I was simply getting up earlier. And the second is that every single training session I had was of high quality because I was always feeling fresh and feeling good. There was some financial investment required as well to help me keep on top of the training program. nutrition, equipment, also the bi-weekly sessions that I mentioned and that gait analysis all cost money. But that was very easy to justify because when I look at it compared to what I would normally be spending on alcohol, it was the same, if not less. This is why quitting alcohol allowed me to have a new level of consistency in my training and preparation. The second ingredient is having a long-term perspective. I already mentioned that historically I've worked in short bursts, and that's because my goals have been very short-term. Running is a high-impact sport, and it's widely recommended that you only increase your weekly mileage by up to 10%, and this is to prevent injuries. I've learned this the hard way. The last time I entered a race was a half marathon, and I only trained in the month beforehand. Then I entered it and ran as hard as I could and subsequently injured myself for 4 months afterwards where I was unable to run. And I never got back to the same level of running until this year. So all of those minimal gains I achieved in the preparation for that race were completely lost, and I was starting again from afresh. So this time I swore to do it differently and take a more structured approach to training with the aim of not getting injured. I found myself a sub 3 hour 30 marathon plan online. Then I followed that to the book. But what I failed to recognize is that those training plans are designed for seasoned marathon runners, people who have been training for years to condition their bodies to take that kind of training volume. And whereas I was looking at the weekly volume increasing by only 10%, what I wasn't looking at is the huge jump in monthly volume that I was doing to meet the demands of this training program. And surprise, surprise, 2 weeks into the plan, I got a significant injury that meant I couldn't even put weight on my right foot. So this short-term perspective meant that I overworked and injured myself. Another problem with the short-term perspective is that I was already thinking about what I was going to do next after the marathon. And this wasn't even running related. This became a case of how many different goals can I fit into the year when I'm not drinking. And then it dawned on me, what if I just concentrated on running? What if I just tried to get really good at one sport? I've spent my whole life moving between sports, getting bored as soon as I didn't see any immediate progress. But not only that, what if I extended the time horizon? So the goal I set was to be achieved over a longer period of time. Not only did this immediately take the pressure off that one race and the training demands that I put on myself, but it meant that I could be more ambitious. So my goal actually changed, and I didn't mention this to anyone, but it changed within the 6 months. Instead of it being running 3 hour 30 at the Edinburgh Marathon this year, it became running sub 3 hour marathon in 5 years. Now this, on paper, simple change had 2 massive impacts to me. The first was that I completely changed my training approach and I removed the pressure from that single race. I trained for longevity and slow, steady progress rather than that immediate burst that led to the burnout of my injury. I viewed the race as more of a checkpoint on my journey to that long-term goal rather than an all or nothing affair where I had to hit a time. And this removed lots and lots of stress from it. I could enter the race knowing that if I feel good on the day, I'll run a good time. But if certain factors just don't work out for me, such as the weather, such as the congestion on the course, it doesn't matter because I'll have many, many more opportunities to hit the goal over a 5-year period. So the immediate stress was removed, but also the aim of where I was trying to get to was now higher. About 15% of people break 3 hours 30 in a marathon, but only 4% of people break 3 hours. So where I'm aiming is now at a more elite level. So what this meant was that when I got to that halfway point of the race and I was off the pace of my initial goal, it didn't bother me. It didn't stress me out. I stayed calm. And then it just so happened that I felt good for the rest of it. And as it went on, it became more and more achievable, and I was able to get into the right headspace to really go for it. It just felt like the time was right. So the goal was achieved, but it wasn't my primary focus. I just laid the foundations of consistency by expanding the time horizon to really master a sport rather than just do one race, ditch it, move on to the next thing, and not make much progress in all of those endeavors. And my mind was already open to this kind of perspective because it was one of the main factors in me taking a break from alcohol. I was looking at myself in 10 years in terms of a health perspective if I continue to drink alcohol compared to if I stopped drinking. I was also looking back at the last 15 years of when I was drinking to come to the conclusion that I needed to undo some of that damage I'd done to my health. So taking a break from alcohol had already helped me look at that long-term perspective. I then applied that to goal setting. The final ingredient that I attribute to the success of this goal is making the goal a part of your identity. And what do I mean by that? So imagine when you ask the question of what is your marathon time to a casual runner or an elite runner. The casual runner would answer, I've done a sub 3-hour marathon once before in my life. Whereas the elite runner would say, I am a sub 3-hour marathon runner. Now, let's not do the casual runner a disservice. That's still an impressive achievement. And they probably get more respect from the people they were talking to than that elite runner who just does it every single day. But no one ever challenges that casual runner and says, what time would you get if you ran a marathon today? But the elite runner can answer with confidence that they'd still be able to achieve that level of performance right now. That has become their new standard. And that casual runner was me. I still cling on to my PBs in the past, some that I haven't done for 5 years, and I'll use them to brag in some regards about a previous level of fitness I'd achieved. And if people were to really challenge and analyze that, they'd see an inconsistent performer, a has-been. And what inspires me now is being that elite runner, that person who has raised their level of standard and could do it on any given day. It comes with a sense of confidence, but also you can be humble in the fact that you know you could do it. You don't have to brag about it. So with this new identity, I rephrase my goal again to become a sub 3-hour runner in the next 5 years. And now when I look at my weekly habits or my decision-making process, it becomes much easier to define. I can ask myself things like, would a sub 3-hour marathon runner binge drink every weekend? What training would a sub 3-hour marathon runner do every single week? So there we have it. a little bit of an insight into why I think I was able to achieve that goal when I've fallen short of so many goals in the past. And for once, I am going to give the credit to alcohol not being a part of my life, but a level of discipline has to come off the back of that. You have to replace the alcohol with the good habits, and that will give you a level of consistency that you hadn't found before. When you couple that with a long-term perspective, and then you combine those to make it part of your identity, you can reframe goals to be more ambitious and increase the chances of you achieving them. And I firmly believe that without alcohol, this is easier. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you're finding any of my content useful. There's plenty more to come. See you soon.